This chapter will look deeper into the idea of social construction. We'll be looking at what Newman calls identifiers. These are the categories we use to specify, both to ourselves and to others, who we are. They're social locations that determine our position in the world relative to other people. At times, we purposely call attention to them through how we dress, walk, use language, and whom we choose to associate with, perhaps even where we live. At other times, though, people ascribe identities to us, whether we want them to or not. Think about so much of what we do involves status, or our social hierarchy. We tend to want to be associated with things that give us greater status amongst certain groups. Some groups ascribe higher status to certain things. For instance, status among high school students might be determined differently than status amongst a group of bankers. But some aspects of status are not fluid. They are mandated on the basis of race, gender, and sexuality, things that tend to be fixed and cannot be changed no matter how much the individual achieves. Well, let's go back to this idea of identifiers, which creates a social location in the world to determine where we fall into the social hierarchy and how we may be treated by other people. While the main categories of race, gender, and sexuality cannot be changed, some of the characteristics that are associated with them are socially constructed. So this idea that while the general category of race, gender, and sexuality are set, we have to think about this in the context of our conscious or unconscious display of those categories as well. We express ourselves in many ways. A prime example of this is the difference in which most men and women dress. Feminine clothes tend to reveal more skin, tend to flow and drape more, and emphasize women's curves. Even a woman dressed for the business world dresses differently than a man. If she wears a business suit, she may still wear perhaps a skirt, heels, generally no tie, and the clothes may be much more colorful. So to some extent, the identifier is fixed, and to some extent, we willingly, though perhaps not consciously, reinforce the socially constructed meaning of that category. How we walk, or even take up space when we are around others, include gender cues. Women tend to take up less space physically when seated. Women more often cross their legs and keep their arms to their sides. And these types of behaviors are considered feminine. Now, some of the identifiers may be less likely to be disclosed, such as sexuality. Who we have sex with, that is to some extent a private matter. At the same time, it can be difficult to keep secret who one is having a relationship with. So that aspect of privacy is easily breached, and difficult to keep secret from the rest of society. Sometimes we want to be identified, in which case, at least in the case of sexuality, individuals can use cues to allow the rest of society to identify them. And the final thing I want to say about identifiers is that there are more dimensions than just race, gender, and sexuality. Social class is something that is fluid in our society. It can change according to achievement. Socioeconomic status is a term used by sociologists which focuses on income and education, and to some extent has your occupation factored into it. So you can see how a doctor with all the years of schooling, a higher income, and occupational status would have a higher socioeconomic status than a food service worker. One's age is an identifier as well. We think differently about children, college-age students, middle-aged workers, and those that are considered senior citizens differently. Our family may give us status and become an identifier too, as will our relationship status, i.e. married, single, or in a committed relationship.